welcome back to the 40% Better podcast, where we talk about all things leadership related, mostly in the technology world. And Ian has graciously accepted our invite. He's here to help us understand more about leadership with an HR slant on it. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, very cool. I'm going to ask you the same question that I ask everybody at the start, which is, how did you get started doing or thinking about leadership?
That's a really cool question because in preparation for our time, I came up with an answer very quickly, which was, when did my formal leadership development journey begin? However, as I spent a little bit more time wrestling with it, I thought a bit more deeply, and before I knew what it was, and if we're defining leadership based upon John Maxwell's definition of influence, that actually began way back when I was in elementary school. Because I've always been a highly relational person, um, I found that I had influence, and I wasn't just relational. People knew that I cared. And because people knew that I cared, I had influence. So when it came time for special projects, when it came time for, and I always had a heart for defending those who were bullied, or those who may be a little bit more introverted. I'm actually an introvert myself, much to the surprise of many. But I always had a heart for people. And because people knew my heart for them, it gave me influence with them. And thankfully, I come from pretty good stock where I use my at least the story in my mind is that I used my powers back in the day for good. But what I can share is, from a more formal perspective, my leadership journey began probably when I was between 19 and 20 years old. The very first leadership development book that I opened and training course that I took was the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. So not only did he have the book, he had the accompanying training. And I was exposed to that by a pastor who literally labored with me until Christ was formed in me, and really was formative as I began to grow in my leadership. So learning how to influence people, to rally them to fulfill a common vision and specific goals, that journey began between 19 and 20.
Nice. I'm okay. I'm kind of jealous because I didn't get any of that stuff when I was 19 or 20. And
I was really fortunate. I was very
yeah,
fortunate.
yeah, that is a uh, wow. That's such a win. Um, and I'm curious, when you in elementary school, when you were noticing that you were relational and able to connect with people better, like, what were some of the signs that you were like, oh, I'm doing this thing that maybe not all the rest of my peer group is doing?
Sure. Well, some of the signs were that I had many of my peer group following me. So whatever my opinion was, that was what we were doing. I had teachers who recognized it. And so I had both informal leadership, and then it became formalized, so to speak, as teachers began to recognize it and call upon me to do a number of different things. So it felt like someone having, for lack of better terms, a bit of power to affect change, a bit of power to influence people to do things that, um, and it's always been my heart to be able to be a blessing. So I had the power to help people do what was in their own best interest, the power to help them do a little bit better. I've always had a heart to help, and that has been ever since I was a little guy, and that has not changed. That has been a significant through line throughout my entire journey, even to this day. For better, and sometimes it feels for worse, because we are people and we have a lot of baggage and we have our own emotions, and you could do your best and invest a significant amount and still things not turn out the way that you want. And I think there are different approaches and different styles to leadership, and mine happens to be quite vulnerable, because I think it can really be a turnoff for a lot of people when they can't relate. When you seem so polished and they don't see any of the cracks, that it's hard for them to relate to you, because either you're so much better than me, or you're pretending. And if you're pretending, I don't know if I can fully trust you. So
Mm.
it feels like sometimes a double-edged sword, where you literally have to lay down your shield. Now, you have to be wise, you have to be strategic. There are certain things that you do need to reserve. But I think that vulnerability is really, really important.
Yeah, I really like that, and especially from the perspective of somebody who's an introvert. That's a very interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
uh, and the it's interesting because this vulnerability thing has been really a key element in my own leadership journey.
mm,
Um, and one of the things early on that I realized, and I think actually this came from something that my dad said about parenting when I was a kid. Was he always talked about he, and this was probably when I was like 10, but he said that he knew that he had all the power, and so he didn't have to always win or really dominate.
I love
And
that.
right,
I love
because he's
that.
like, I'm your dad, like, I'm bigger, stronger, and I control what you do. I don't have to be domineering. I can be very, very, very gentle, right?
I
And that
love
stuck
that.
with me. Yeah. And so, I've always figured that the people that I'm serving, um, y- you know, I just assumed I've got all the power to make whatever go on, which
Sure.
may be um, hubris, but I figure if I assume that I have the power, it's just a question of figuring out what is going to make it happen, you know?
I so love that. One of the interesting dynamics that I found is that the more you give, for lack of better terms, power away and influence, the greater
Mhm.
yours grows. Um,
Exactly.
we have become finely attuned to certain things. We can see through, for the most part, many insecurities. We can see through people who are lording or wielding their power because there are some major character deficits. So when people, not that they have to think or believe that you're perfect, but when they see that you're pretty secure and you're secure enough to be open and you're secure enough and comfortable enough to love me enough to offend me, I think there are a number of different leadership styles, but I think leadership is both tough and tender, and we have to know how and when to balance the two of them. Sometimes,
Yeah.
after your people have blown it and they've fallen on their face and they're discouraged and they have a whole lot of life going on because life has a wonderful way of lifing for all of us, we need to understand and be appreciative of the more tender side of leadership. But sometimes, based upon the personality, you have to be a bit more tough. You have to challenge people to grow. And many of us don't do the type of challenging that we should because it makes us uncomfortable. It
Right.
it it is an interesting thing. Um and I love the leaders who are not afraid to be lovingly confrontational, because the ultimate goal is not to crush you, is to challenge you, to spur you on, and to even stretch you beyond what you're comfortable being stretched so that you can achieve perhaps even more than what you thought you could. Those are the types of leaders that I like, the leaders that are secure. They don't have to be domineering, um, because I find some of the people of greatest influence, it's more subtle, it's more quiet. And
Right.
again, there are different leadership styles, but I would prefer, and it's always been more attractive to me, to be someone who is magnetic. I want to be around him. I want to be around her because when I'm around them, it feels like I'm taller because I'm standing next to them, and it feels like I'm on their shoulders, right? It's
Yeah.
that type of leadership that's really attractive, where you don't feel like you just engage with the energy vampire to just suck the life out of you. You know what I mean? Those people who are life giving, who have you have earned their respect enough, excuse me, you've earned their respect enough where they're willing to be vulnerable and they are comfortable with you challenging them, even though sometimes, albeit kicking and screaming. Once you've had your temper tantrum, you realize that this person has your best interest at heart. And I just find that that's really hard to do with leadership styles that aren't highly relational in nature. I don't just believe you should just have this love affair and this love fest and this love at all costs. And I don't want to do anything to offend you. Sometimes I need to offend you because our insecurities, our immaturities, when someone calls it out, when someone pokes at our gooey center, it can be offensive. But just
Right.
because it doesn't feel good doesn't mean that it's not for our good. And I think strong leaders know how to do just that. Not perfectly, but I think good leaders know when and how to push and prod and when to pull back and when to pick up and when to challenge and slow down and rein in. So that's the kind of leadership that's always been attractive to me.
Yeah. No, I like that. And because I grew up in competitive sports, I always think about sports coaching analogies. And really
Yes.
that what you're describing is what the best sports coaches, at least in my life, have done. Um, and also it's how I think about parenting,
Yes.
like how I think about getting my kids to do uncomfortable things. And one of the things I think, one of the nuances there is that for, as we're operating in leadership roles, we need to do uncomfortable stuff ourselves,
Yes.
uh, and 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 be a role model that it's okay to do the uncomfortable thing.
I love it.
And because it's a bit hypocritical to tell people go do something uncomfortable that I'm not willing to do myself,
And I'm
right?
sitting in the lap of luxury and comfort. You know, there's a phrase that I love. It's a an Irish phrase that life is better felt than telt. You know, I think the first level of leadership is self-leadership. If you don't lead
Yep.
yourself well, you're gonna lose all credibility. And in leading yourself well, what you're doing is modeling. You're modeling the
Yes.
right type of behavior. Modeling doesn't mean simply pointing. You know what I mean? It
Right. Right.
is,
Right.
hey, listen, follow me as I take us on and through this journey. And not only that, the circle is complete when you're doing the same thing for someone else.
Right. Yeah. 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 And I think that modeling, I think it gets missed by a lot of people. Um, and I and it's kind of one of those where, if you're not the CEO at a company and you know that the executives above you aren't doing hard things, then you have to actually have a bit more, I don't know, investment in yourself, maybe,
You do.
to go, okay, I'm going to go do, like, they're not doing the hard stuff, but I'm going to do it anyway because I know that my team is looking to somebody.
Yes.
And so that just seemed to me, and I think, again, early mentors, um, doing hard things was one of those. Oh, wait a minute, they're doing hard stuff. I can do hard stuff too.
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
know, I if I could be transparent, I'll share much to my chagrin. I had to really train myself to learn to do hard things. We talked about it just briefly before. I'm a bit of a psychology and neuroscience junkie. One of the chapters in my book is Do Hard Things. We are actually built to do hard things. There's a part of our
Yeah.
brain that lights up. It's called a mid-anterior cingulate cortex. The more hard things we do, the bigger that portion of our brain gets, and it helps us to do even more hard things. Um,
Yep.
the reality is, it's like a muscle, though. So it may have taken quite a bit for the C-suite to have gotten where they are. And unfortunately, it's human nature. Like, our brain doesn't like doing hard things. Like, contrary to popular belief, our brain is not designed to make us happy and successful. Our brain is designed to keep us alive, and it wants to save energy, right? So it wants to keep us safe and to save energy. Doing hard things takes a significant amount of energy over and over and over again. And it's like a muscle, right? As long as you continue to do it, that muscle continues to be ripped and it grows. But as soon as you stop for an extended period of time, that's why it's so amazing. You could see people who were former Navy SEALs, or you could see people who were in the service where they had strict disciplines And then you say, well, wait a minute, how did you get the pot belly? And how is it that you're just, you know what I mean? So this isn't me taking shots because I'm not a military guy, but I've seen it over and over and over again. But it explains the phenomenon that, yeah, it's like a muscle. You got to continue to do it. And I think what's such a blessing for you is that you had it modeled for you. And that's just
Yeah.
so very important. People need to be able to see that you're one of us. You know, you're not sitting in an ivory tower. Are
Mhm.
there certain things that should not bubble up to the top levels and layers of leadership? Absolutely. But people need to be able to see that in as much as you're continuing to stretch and grow, they are as well. Interestingly, I shared with you the very first leadership development book that I ever picked up was John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. The very first law in that book is the law of the lid. So we are the lid or the cap on the leadership of the organizations that we lead. So if we stop growing, when you have people who have a higher lid level, if you don't raise yours, they're going to go around you or they're going to transition out. So we have to be continuous learners. We have to continually challenge ourselves to do the stuff that sucks. Because as we do, we're modeling what we want to be able to see. And I think that's what's so important about cultures. You can't have a culture as just a few taglines or a few keywords. You literally have to live it, right?
Right. Exactly.
Because people are paying much more attention to what we do than what we say. And we most
Right.
certainly want to make sure that those things are congruent. But even if we say nothing, if we wanted to build a culture, it should be based upon what they see us doing. It does not happen by osmosis.
Right. Right. Yeah, and it's interesting. I I will admit to for years, like I've spent a lot of time working on hacking my own head, and building my own behavior stack,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And
I love the
so
way you say that because that's one of the best ways to create a new habit is by stacking it on a habit that you don't have to think about. So you use that
right,
word stack. That's a really important
yeah,
word in
yeah,
behavioral modification.
yeah. And I always think about like I think about it that way, oh God, what's his name? That's the book. There's a book called Tiny Habits.
Yes.
Not atomic.
Charles Duhigg. So you got
Uh,
no. That's there are a number of
that's
them. So
atomic.
atomic
Or
habits, that's one. We got tiny habits as another one.
yeah,
And so we got a number of the power of habit. That's who Duhigg, I believe.
yeah. So,
Um,
so so Tiny Habits. He talks about habit stacking, and so for me, one of the things is I've intellectualized that I need to do something hard every day. The easy thing being go to the gym and get exercise, right?
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and and as time has gone on, there's and like I started doing this when I was in college, but one of the things I've learned is that as time has gone on, there's more and more research that daily exercise is good for our brain chemistry and physical health and everything else, right? And so now intellectually I have a reward system. Like
Yes.
I got up, I made coffee, and I went for a 30-minute walk this morning.
Yep.
And now when I get back, I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, oh, that's actually a good way to start the day.
That's
I got some
awesome.
fresh air, I got some sunshine, I got my body moving, and that's a good start, right? Okay, great. I've got a lunchtime bike ride. After this call, I'm going on a bike ride.
Yes.
That's what I'm doing for lunch is I'm going on a bike ride, and so I'm I'm habit
Well, you don't have
stacking
to rub it
reward.
in. I'm sorry to interrupt. You don't have to
Yeah.
rub it in because I'm here with 14 degrees and you're there in California. Thanks a lot, Bill. But okay, back to our
Well,
regularly
yeah,
scheduled program.
yeah. Wait a minute. You could put on snowshoes and you could go and have an awesome time.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's the thing, and I noticed like my older son, um, he thrives when we do stuff in horrible weather,
I
and
love it.
it's because he really he gets excited when it's that level of discomfort. He's
Oh,
like, "Oh, great, we're gonna go work." Like we're putting the roof onto a tiny cabin we built, and uh, we started and it was cool and kind of cloudy and no big deal, and then it started to drizzle, and then it started to rain, and neither one of us was dressed for it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, I'm gonna keep going, and I'm watching him, and I'm like, I wonder how far he's willing to go, right?
Yeah.
And he was willing to go all the way until I said, okay, it's time to stop because my hands don't work anymore. My fingers are too cold, and we're using power tools, and that's a risky
Yeah.
combination. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, it's time. Okay, yeah, I'm calling it quits, and he's shivering and I'm shivering, and but he was laughing about it, and he still talks about it today. This is a couple of years ago,
Wow.
and and every time, like, and that's just one example of doing that, right?
I so
It's
love that. I so love that for a number of different reasons. His ability to lean in and embrace the suck, to do
Yeah,
hard things, and what he has learned, at least this is what I believe, based upon what you've just communicated, he has learned how to reward himself with dopamine for the process. Most people
yeah,
think that dopamine is just a molecule of pleasure. It's really the molecule of drive. And the people who are able to really build grit and who are resilient and who can do the super long races, the endurance races, the 100 milers or more, they have this internal self rewarding system where they reward themselves for being uncomfortable. Your son sounds like he's amazing. And because he has learned to do that, which a whole lot of people can't. And I started sharing this, and forgive me, I'll just close the loop. I said, much to my chagrin, I had to learn how to do hard things because I used to think it was a poor philosophy, very bad mindset, that if things were too hard, I thought it meant that that was something that I shouldn't be doing and that I should change directions. So the fact that he has developed this internal reward system where he can constantly replenish his dopamine by saying, this is the good part when it sucks the most, he's going to be absolutely amazing, even more amazing than I believe he already is. So thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
Maybe off air, you could tell me about how he developed that because I'm so
Oh, sure.
interested in it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you on air so people know. So, uh, I started both of my kids playing water polo when they
Okay.
were, I think, 9,
Okay.
and this was their choice. Like, it wasn't like they both started swimming when they were like 5 months old because I'm super aquatic. And there's a school here that starts kids. Um, they start swimming lessons for kids when they're 5 months old because they can hold their
Wow.
breath.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And so, yeah, so I was like, I love being in the water, and I want them to have fun in the water. So we started doing it, and water polo's challenging. Um, and they both played for 9+ years. They played until they were seniors in high school.
Wow.
Um, and so, and the other thing is, I used to, when they were little, I towed them behind my bicycle everywhere. Like, that was the thing, was I put them in a chariot hooked up to the back of the bicycle, and I'm like, we're going to the grocery store. It's a mile away. You're going to have groceries on the way home on your laps. And they, like, that was how they grew up
I love it.
until they were like, I don't know. I'm trying to remember when it got stolen when they were, I want to say, like 5 and 7.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. It was like I was towing 110 pounds of kids.
Wow.
And like, we go to the movies, like, we're gonna go see a movie. They're in the chariot. I'm pedaling. We go watch a movie. We're coming home. Didn't matter what the weather was because it had a plastic cover. And so I just modeled, like, this is the right thing to do for us, and it's uncomfortable. And I didn't even ever say it was uncomfortable. I'm just like, it's raining out and I don't care.
I so love that. One of the things that I began doing a couple of years ago, it's so interesting. Listen, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I had gotten so used to comfort that so everyone in my family, including my wife, they all love the water. So we got our kids, not at
Beautiful.
5 months, but our kids can swim like fish. and my wife loves the water. She's content. As long as you can get her to a body of water, she's content. Whenever we would go on vacation, I rarely, if ever, would get in anything other than a hot tub because I didn't like oh, it's so embarrassing. I didn't like the momentary displeasure of getting in the cold pools or getting into whatever body of water we were near. And I'm like, you know what? This is a really poor example. I do a whole lot of other hard stuff, and my kids are seeing this, right? So this is one
Exactly.
thing that I really need to get under control. So I started doing um I made up my mind. I ended up that very year, once I made that resolve, I did my first polar plunge. And so that
Oh
was most
yeah.
certainly an experience. And then I started doing cold showers every day. And then as a family, we would do cold shower contests. So yeah,
That's
it's
huge.
so embarrassing that literally for years on vacations, I wouldn't like, nah, you guys go get in, enjoy yourself. I'm just gonna hang out right. I'm, go, I'm gonna hang out right here. Oh my God. And this is now immortalized. Going to be immortalized when this thing is released, but it's okay. I'll take it. Hopefully it'll
It's
be instructive.
better late than never, right? You know,
Absolutely.
that's the thing. Like, the best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago, and uh, you know, and
Yeah.
so yeah. But I think this is part of having a growth mindset.
Yep. It is.
Is you're like,
It
oh,
is.
I want to improve this thing, and so you start nibbling away at the problem.
Absolutely.
Um, like, well, now here's the next. You can go snow swimming, right? You
Snow
can run
swimming.
outside. Yeah, so people are doing this now. This is kind of, I'm not sure it's the next level of cold plunge or just people that don't have pools, but
Okay.
they bathing suit and go dive into a snowbank.
Really? Yeah,
Yeah,
I would
that's
have to be a much stronger swimmer to be comfortable with that. I,
yeah,
I would, my family, they swim like fish. I, on the other hand, do not. I swim well enough to save my life. Uh,
that's good. Okay.
yeah,
So
I swim well enough to save my life. I've got to really invest a lot more time in treading for a longer period of time before I'll be comfortable with that.
well, this is just snow, right? It's just go in the snow and
Oh, it's
just lay
just
down. Yeah, in a
really.
bathing suit.
Now
Yeah,
that's
that's it. It's very
interesting. So
simple.
one thing that my kids wouldn't join me this year, but every year we used to just go out when it was snowing the heaviest with our shirt off and our shorts. We just go outside and stay out there for 5 minutes. And
Yeah.
we have a couple of those times on video. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe you're the first person to do it, and now you've got video evidence that you started this trend.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's
Absolutely.
the
I love it.
discomfort. Yeah. So it's very cool. So I want to talk a little bit about the business that you're in right now and what you guys
Sure.
do. Um, what's like the synopsis?
Sure. So the synopsis is this. If you are a lower middle market employer and you're wrestling with one of these three or all three challenges, we help. If you're wrestling with employee engagement, employee performance, or employee retention, that's when you call us. So we offer keynotes, we offer workshops, we offer executive coaching, and then we have our done for you service. And we've built that based upon a methodology that I have developed, which has allowed me to, no matter where I was at, companies large or small, or even ministry, allowed me to not only keep my people, but to ensure that they were highly engaged and performing at their best level. And that wasn't because I'm so special. The reason that I was able to get that level of performance and commitment is because they knew how special they were to me. So I reverse engineered what I'd done, because for the past 2 decades, what I've been doing is coaching in the small business space. So I've had the privilege of working with companies from startups to even several multi-billion dollar corporations, which isn't necessarily small business. But much of what my focus has been on small businesses. But because I wanted to have a much greater impact, that's why I transitioned into the lower middle market space. And I created a methodology called the Axe method. And I did that based upon not just my anecdotal experience, but also based upon what the research and the data say about how is it that you can significantly enhance engagement. And if you'll permit, I'll just walk through it really quickly.
Yeah, of course.
So
Yeah. Oh,
the
yeah.
A in the ACTS method stands for aspirations. When people are making progress toward their personal goals and dreams, irrespective of what they're doing at their job, sometimes it overlaps, sometimes it doesn't. But when you can help people achieve their goals and dreams or their greatest aspirations, engagement is going to skyrocket. Now, to do that, you have to be really interested. You have to be really vested in that person's success. What that means is what you can't do is treat everyone on your team the same. I think in many ways, we have to be chameleons as leaders.
Yeah.
We can't look for our people to adjust to our style. Certain characteristics we want our team to take on, but we have to adapt to the personalities of everyone that we're working with. And so you have to get a chance to know people. You have to know what makes them tick. You have to know their goals and their dreams and their fears. So the A with the service that we provide is stands for aspirations, and that's part of what gets people excited about waking up in the morning, right? So they begin to reframe that, man, when I come to this job, I'm not just getting a great salary and good benefits. My personal goals and dreams, I'm working toward them actively. And if, according to Tony Robbins, he says that progress equals happiness. Happy employees are better employees, right? So the A stands for aspirations. But here's what most of us and some of us have even painfully come to realize. Have you ever invested a significant amount of time, even years, working toward a particular goal or a dream, and you get there and you expect that it's going to be bliss continually, only to realize that it was fleeting? And so, because of that feeling, um, A stands for aspirations, but C stands for calling. I think a big part of the reason that people experience that is because they haven't discovered what they've been uniquely created to do. So the C stands for calling, where we help people discover and demonstrate what they've been uniquely called to do in the world to give them a deeper sense of purpose. And again, this may or may not have anything to do necessarily with the work that you're doing at your company, but we still help you toward that end. T stands for transformation. So, how is it that we can help to make you better, not just for your role within the company, but ultimately where you like to go and perhaps where your leader sees you, but not only within the company, but transformation also means when I come to this job and when I get the training that I'm getting and I'm getting the one on one coaching, I'm a much better husband. When I come to this job, my life is transformed because I'm a better father. When I come to
Mm-hmm.
this job, not only are my aspirations being fulfilled, have I discovered and demonstrated what I'm called to do, but my life is being completely transformed. And then the S, the first three letters in the ACTS method, really speaks to how we directly engage with the employees. The S stands for support. That's where we do the executive coaching and we help develop a systematic approach or undergird what they're doing with so that we can provide care during the most critical moments of our employees' lives. For example, when the child of your employee goes off to college, do we have a built-in budget and do we have a process of getting a care packet to them? Do we have a communication mechanism so that when they go off, um, the employer is saying, "Hey, we want to encourage you. Your mom, your dad, they're doing a wonderful job. This is just something to be able to support." Or what happens when your employee has another major life moment like purchasing a new home? So, do we send them a gift card to wherever that place is in a nice welcome home basket, right? Or even in more difficult cases, what happens in the loss of a spouse or a child?
Mm-hmm.
How do we institutionalize and systematize a system of support? So the A in the ACTS method is aspirations, C is calling, T is transformation, and then the S is support. So that's what we do with larger corporations.
I love that.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
No, it's great because I've certainly found that when I can help my people achieve their aspirations, to your point, like I think about it as intrinsic motivation, but that's such a powerful lever that that number one, it dramatically reduces churn. And
Absolutely. It
and
creates
last,
loyalty to a fault,
yeah,
where sometimes
exactly,
you
yeah,
have to tell them, "Hey, listen, I care about you enough that I'm going to force you out of this role." But
yeah,
while you're
yeah,
in it, not just out of this role, even out of this company, because this is not going to allow you to get where you want to be. Now, we do it appropriately,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm going to push you out. I know you want to stay, but I'm going to push you out, right? Here's what we know. People often come to companies and they're lured in by, and lured, I wish I were a bit more articulate, I could find another term, but what's attractive, that's what came to mind. I
no,
don't
it's
want
a
to
good
say it like
word though.
they put a spell on them,
Right,
but it is often the salary and the benefits that brings them in, but it's the culture that causes
right,
them to stay. And that culture is made up of people. People make up the
yep,
culture. And so when you create that type of culture, you can buy a hand for a season, but you have to win a heart. When you've won a heart and someone has been so instrumental in transforming your life, the secret to the Axe method is simply creating a deep sense of reciprocity. That's it.
yeah, yeah,
All of that is
yep,
designed to create deep reciprocity because people will do their very level best when they know you really care and you really are vested. You have a vested interest in their success.
yeah, yeah. I like that. Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting. That's such a it's such a logical thing to do, and it seems to make so much sense. And yet, why is it that HR departments don't do that by default?
Sure.
Like
Well, I think
they will do. I will say I've been at companies where the support part. I've been at a bunch of companies where the support part was actually pretty well done, and all those things you're talking about were pretty standard, but they didn't have the aspirational side at all. And I think that's a key. I think that's like a catalyst point.
yeah.
You know?
I 100% agree. To answer your question, albeit inadequately, I think some of them um, simply aren't aware.
Mm,
They understand that we are people and we're not robots and we have emotions. So you find some employee assistance programs that have maybe psychological counseling, mental health counseling. You
mm-hmm.
find some resources for certain things. So I applaud that. This isn't me taking shots at all, but I don't think many people are as equipped as they could or perhaps should be that maybe occupy those roles um, to be able to implement something like this. And then, too, I think that sometimes rather than HR being viewed as a profit center, as the center of the universe that makes everything
Yeah.
go, it seems for some people like a necessary evil. When people
Right.
will always be your greatest resource and your greatest asset if you develop them as such. And so I think that there are a lot of HR leaders that may have tried programs that didn't work out. So it requires courage to do something like this, and it requires an investment, right? I
Right.
think some of the more engaged companies, they'll invest at least 1%, but the more engaged companies will invest 3% of their annual revenue pouring back into their people. And I think those are the companies that are a bit more in they're a bit better at engagement. They're a bit better at the types of cultures that they're building. And I'll say this as well. I think, we learned at the turn of the Industrial Revolution that people can't be worked as if they're robots, right? So
Right.
we started humanizing that process a little bit more. I happen to think that some of the better companies are going to catch on to the fact that they have to treat people like people as individuals. And we need to make sure that we can build something that's sustainable so that we can speak to the actual individuals. And we have to think about retraining our people because another challenge is even if they have the desire, they don't have the ability. And then the other thing, final thing that I'll share is capacity. One of the reasons why we started doing or providing done for you services at Employee Success Company is because HR leaders may have the desire, but as they look at their leaders may even have the desire, but the capacity to pull something like this off, especially we talked about like it's hard to be what you didn't see. So if you haven't seen that, can you learn and should
Yeah.
you learn? Yes, but with all of your other responsibilities, this may be a tipping point that sends some people over the edge. It's like this is too much. So
Yeah.
that's why initially, the last year and a half or so, I was just evangelizing the methodology and I was just going to consult on the methodology. The reason that I decided to provide the done for you services is because execution is the only thing that will allow us to experience the outcomes. So it is with the employers as well, and they need
Right.
to be able to outsource it. And I think too, and I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I said that was the final point. The final point that I'll make regarding this, I believe, is this. And I hadn't thought about this before, but when you have a company that is completely separated, I think there's a greater sense of fidelity to the employees and it helps to build trust because they don't look at you with such suspicion and feel like this is just manipulation to get me to do better or more, especially if I may have leaders that aren't as strong and aren't up to the par and haven't been weeded out by the company or the culture. So having an outside company, an outside party where it's very clear, hey, though we are footing the bill, this is strictly for you. I think
Right.
that's really
Right.
important.
Yeah. Yeah. That optic is really good. And it's interesting because as you're talking, I'm thinking about in software development, you have this thing called agile project management,
Right.
and there's like I'm a uh, agile coach.
Okay.
I've done a bunch of courses to get certified, all that stuff, right? And what's
Absolutely.
interesting is I've been at companies where one of the things about being an agile coach is when you go to work for a company, you want to work yourself out of a job. That's kind of the goal, right? And so which seems weird to go into a company and be like, like full disclosure, I shouldn't be here more than 2 years, right?
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
everything, like people should be able to, like I should be able to evaluate what's going on, start the process of making improvements, get everybody to be really happy about it, and and over time get them to start doing all the behaviors without me having to be in the room, right?
I love
And
that.
so your approach is really the same thing because you the people that don't know how to do this stuff, they need to see a role model, and you being there as the consultant, now you are the role model and they can go, oh wait a minute, that thing that Ian's doing, I could actually, after they watch you do it 5 times or some number, right, they're like, oh wait a minute, I could do that. And then they can be part of that process for
Yes.
ongoing future improvement, right? And that, I think that's a really good model. It's a really good mechanism. Totally makes sense. um I like that. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, there was something that you said that really stood out for me, and it is something that potentially causes insecurities with a lot of leaders is the idea that my greatest success is my actual succession. So you're saying I
Oh
shouldn't
yeah.
be in there more than 2 years. So the
Yeah.
goal of a leader is to make himself not necessarily needed.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
cycle is complete when again you are doing for others what I have done for you. And the company, ideally, the company is growing and I'm moving on to greener pastures where I can start this cycle and this process all over again. So I think that's a really, really important thing. And absolutely,
Yeah.
the idea of modeling this is very important. And it is my hope that some companies will bring me in and say, you know what, rather than outsourcing this, I want to infuse this type of leadership development culture inside of my company. So, can you just consult me and can you consult with my leaders to help them do just that? I think the important thing for people to really embrace is that it requires a lot of intentionality. And not only that, it requires you actually needing to care about your people, not just what they can do for you. You have to care about their personhood. And
Right. Right.
that may seem like a subtle distinction, but it's not. It's huge. I don't just care about what you can produce. I care about you. And we can tell when somebody is all into me or if you're into me just enough to find out why I can't do or I'm not producing more. That's that's something that I think people need to pay close attention to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally agree with that. I think as we've as we've come to this place where we see people in hiring people as just being like replaceable widgets,
You're
like
clogging the wheel.
yeah, if I oh yeah okay, if I run out of ink in this pen, I can just go buy another Sharpie brown pen.
Right.
But people are much more complicated, right?
Much more complicated and much more
And
costly.
much more costly, and it's really in almost every case it's better to optimize the person than to replace them. And I think that's one of those, because people don't say this often enough.
Yeah.
um they don't think about it because they don't hear it. They don't hear somebody say, oh wait a minute, how do we optimize the people? What does that look like? And then,
Right.
oh, I have to actually care about my people, to your point, right? And
Yeah. Which a lot of
that's such
people
a
don't.
critical. Yeah, and that's, like, I hate to say it, but I don't really care too much about this brown pen, right? Like, if
Right.
it quits working, I'm going to go buy a new one because I know there's a machine that pumps out 1 million of these a week.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but
Right.
that's not this. It's not the same with people. And the flip side to it is, this brown pen is only ever going to write brown ink. It's
Yeah.
very limited in its functionality, right? It will
Hmm.
never become a coffee mug. But
Absolutely.
people have such a breadth of potential that if we focus on them, all of a sudden we're like, oh my God, Mary is doing this stuff that, oh, that's
Absolutely.
amazing. And her value to the company has just gone up by 50%.
And she may be doing the production of what two or three other people might be able to
Yeah,
do. Like here is
yeah,
from a tangible perspective, like, listen, okay, so it's harder for you to measure engagement. Okay, fine. Well, let's just talk about the hard cost of turnover. It's at least
right.
$50,000 per hire. It's at least one up to four times the salary of that person that you're replacing. So, okay, you don't like this fluffy stuff. Fine. Here's how much it's costing you every time you do this. And the
Right.
research
Yeah.
has been clear. The data, that's what it says.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, part of the reason that, from my perspective, this is easy to do in the software world is that with Agile, we can track a team's productivity week over week because the tasks they're doing and the points on it, right? And so, excuse me, I can go, oh, right now they're doing 25 story points a week. In 6 months, they'll be doing 40. And that's a significant improvement in coding output. Oh, and by the way, nobody wants to leave, and now we're saving recruiting costs.
All because you didn't just treat me like a coding machine. All because you made a real human connection and you talked to me about, hey, beyond what you're doing here, what are your hopes? What are your dreams? Okay, there's you know what? There's somebody I want you to connect with. Here's a great read. You know what? I saw this podcast and I thought of you. I was out the other day and I saw this thing and I picked it up for you. I think this would be phenomenal. And I recognize that if you did this, this, and this, I think you would be faster or get along further along in your journey. Those types of
Yeah,
things make a
yeah,
difference. And when
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not
Huge.
mechanical, when it's not, though it needs to be systematic, though it needs to be intentional, I'm not just checking this off my list and getting you something that may or may not necessarily be helpful toward your aspirations and your goals and dreams and what you feel like you're called to do again outside of here. So
Yeah,
treating
I love
people,
that.
it's a human-centered approach.
Yeah,
Treating people like people, that requires a lot of effort and it requires you to be courageous because we talked about the importance earlier of showing vulnerability and you may pour out everything that you have and then find that someone doesn't respond in the way that you thought that they should. But the reality is this: you don't always control the response. I take that back. You don't control their response. What you control is your behavior. And if your heart is
Right.
to do that, no matter who the person is, you're winning. Because
Yeah.
once you average out the success rate, you're going to find that it's going to be much better than you not having taken the time to have invested in your people in such a significant way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I think investing in our people is the smartest thing we can do. Yeah. It's beautiful. This has been awesome. Thank you.
Yes, it has.
I'm looking at the time and being like, okay, we only booked an hour, and I want to make sure I'm giving you time very carefully. So this has been great. Um, how can people get hold of you?
Sure. So they can get a hold of me in two ways. You can go to my website, employeesuccesscompany.com. That's employee success company. Or check me out on LinkedIn, which is Ian M. Watts. LinkedIn is
Beautiful.
Ian M. Watts. And I'd be more than happy to have a complimentary strategy session for anyone that's a part of your community. And this is not a pitch fest. This is, hey, where are you? Where would you like to be? Where are the impediments? Let's talk about how we can help you get through those. And if we can assist you along that journey, great. If not, hopefully, you'll walk away much better and with some resources than prior to having met with us.
Cool. Thank you. So, and I will put links to this stuff in the show notes also.
Awesome.
So we'll have it be there in writing. Cool. This has been awesome. Thanks, folks, for listening, and Ian, thanks for joining us. I
Thank you.
appreciate.